So like Megan said, I'm in charge of our community programs at NC. I have worked at NC for coming up to 6 years now, 4 in my current position of managing our stewardship programs. So I'm really excited to share more about what those programs look like. But I'll start with if I can get my computer to, there we go. I'll start with a brief overview of NC. So the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association educates, inspires, and engages the community to take action to keep wild salmon here for future generations. We do that through what we like to think of as 3 pillars. So the first pillar is restoration. That can look like anything from planting native trees and shrubs along a creek to help provide those services that plants provide, like shade and filtration and erosion control. It can look like this picture here, which was a bridge that was put in to replace a failing fish passage barrier. It can look like installing really large woody debris into a creek to help make it flow more naturally, especially when creeks were straightened a lot along properties or just had logs removed for transport or something like that. So restoration is a large facet of what NC does. The other 2 facets of NC's organization is education and stewardship. So education are programs that are focused on youth and teachers in Whatcom County. So our education department is in nearly every 4th grade classroom in Whatcom County, and they take students out on field trips and basically allow them to become salmon scientists. Most of the field trips happen on creeks that are within walking distance of their school, so it's very place-based learning experience, and they can learn all about water quality, the salmon that live in that creek, the plants around that creek, and especially ways to take care of the habitat. The other education programs we have are our summer preschool program, preschool camp, and we have an entire program dedicated to teaching teachers how to teach climate science. As a local nonprofit that works specifically in the environmental field, we have the ability to provide different materials, trainings, and encouragement to teachers that they would otherwise not be able to receive. And then we have our stewardship programs. That's where I live at NC. Stewardship for us, I'm going to go into it very deeply, so I won't waste too much time here talking about it. But stewardship is basically where the community part of NC's mission takes the front and center stage. So at NC, stewardship for us means action. It can be a variety of actions. It doesn't have to be management. It can be as simple as cleaning up your litter on a walk. It can be planting a tree. But what our programs try to focus on is providing awareness, knowledge, and empowerment to the general public. People that want to know more, are excited to learn more, and are looking for sort of that pressure to take that knowledge and apply it. The programs then provide opportunity and means. So an event where you have access to trees and a space to plant them, an event where you are able to see salmon firsthand. And to us, that equals community action. That's the whole crux of what stewardship programs, the goal of stewardship programs at NC are about. So we have 3 stewardship programs that I'm going to briefly go over. One is the Nooksack River Stewards program. It is focused in the summer to inspire visitors and residents of all ages to practice stewardship to minimize impacts on the river. So it's river recreation, I should say, summer recreation. It's in partnership with the Forest Service. We also partner with Whatcom County and the Nooksack Indian Tribe. And we provide a lot of education and outreach specifically during that time of year where people are kind of flocking to waterways, because those are the best, summer's the best time to be in the water and by the water. We have our Stream Stewards program that's focused on connecting volunteers to those local action opportunities. A lot of the problems that salmon face can come down to a lack of habitat, a lack of healthy habitat. And so we really strive to not only make that a core piece of what we do, but also a core piece of what opportunities we provide to the community so that they can be a part of that habitat improvement across the county. And then we also have our salmon discovery program. This is meant to really foster a connection between people and salmon, because salmon are widespread in our community, but there are countless people I've met since working at NSEA that have never seen a salmon before because they don't know where to go, when to go. And salmon, as prominent as they are in our environment and cultures in the Pacific Northwest, they can be kind of mysterious. They can be evasive and not evasive, elusive, and can really just live in your backyard, and you'll never know if you don't have that information and you don't have that chance to learn about it. So salmon sightings are a great way that we provide opportunities to connect salmon. And then one of the main programs I'm going to talk about through this salmon discovery program is our salmon spotters, which is brand new. So where exactly does community fit in? I'm going to focus on stream stewards and salmon discovery today. There is a very obvious aspect of community in our river stewards program, but the other two programs are where most of our opportunities to participate in the work we do as just a member of the general public surface. So we have at NC, we were established in 1991. So we've been doing this for over 30 years now in Whatcom County, which means that we have for a long time been seen as the experts in salmon in our region. Because of that, and because I run our community program, so I tend to be the most front-facing person for the organization sometimes, I get lots of questions like this. What type of salmon live in this creek? Or when will the salmon be back to this creek? Or where can I see salmon? That's usually the biggest question I get. Every fall, when we know salmon are returning to spawn, I get calls that say, where can I see salmon? Or I have family visiting. What's a great place to access to show them the marvel that is salmon returning up creek to spawn? And one of the biggest problems I have is I don't have a lot of answers to those questions. Not to say salmon data doesn't exist. Salmon data is paramount to our work. It's paramount to the co-managers, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, the local tribes, the cities and counties that work on projects specifically for salmon habitat, and then also the people that have lived here for generations and have that anecdotal and generational knowledge of salmon that they have personally seen. That's a lot of information. So it feels like we should be able to answer the questions that I posed earlier really easily. But one of the problems is that sometimes the data doesn't match each other. So an anecdotal story might not match what I can find online from the state, or nature can change over time. We know rivers and creeks, water in general is a really powerful force. It can really change how these different habitats can interact. And before I go further, I will just make a note. I put this in here just to remind myself that not everyone will know when salmon spawn. So the salmon spotters data that I'm going to talk about is focused on the chum and coho salmon, which are the bottom ones. So in our area, we expect to see chum and coho returning and actually spawning between November and January. That will come up again a little bit later. Okay, so what happens when salmon data doesn't match each other? I like to call this example the disappearing salmon. This is a map every color on this map represents some kind of salmon habitat, either salmon that has been documented there, and it uses it for spawning, or its babies use it to rear and grow up. So we have a lot of salmon habitat in our county. When we zoom in to an area near Glacier in the National Forest right next to us, that little box is supposed to be over Boyd Creek, but that's okay. This little creek off of the North Fork of the Nooksack River called Boyd Creek. This data is accessible online. Anyone could log in and look at it. It says that coho have been documented there. Its runtime description is basically they don't know if it uses it to rear or if that's specific spawning ground, but the fact that it has documented listed third from the bottom means that someone has seen coho there before. And in fact, Boyd Creek in the Forest Service is an interpretive trail that actually has signage posted along the trail all about the salmon habitat and the salmon that return to Boyd Creek. However, ever since I've started at NC, Boyd Creek was always one of those sort of unfortunate losses. Like the river flow, the river regime changed, and now salmon don't go into Boyd Creek anymore. So I've always known Boyd Creek. I've always known about the interpretive trail. I've been on that trail. I've looked at the signs, and it's kind of haunting to see those signs juxtaposed next to a creek that staff, Forest Service all say you're not going to see salmon in there anymore. I can. I'm pretty sure it's this one here. Oh, you can't see my mouse. Oh, that's weird.
I guess, well, yeah, with like white or something.
I think it's that one, the like brown one with the red.
Or
It's upstream of Glacier, the town of Glacier. If you're familiar with the Forest Service area, it's the road you take to get to Skyline Divide. So I think it's Forest Service Road 30, it's either 37 or 39, but you turn on Glacier Creek Road and you're heading like as if you're heading to Thompson. So it's the turn to the left before you head towards Thompson. Yeah. Given that the little neon yellow box isn't in the right place, my guess is that the whole map has moved off more than I wanted. But if we look at this map, nope, that's worse. It's one of those tiny little creeks in there. Yeah. Okay, so this creek has always has had salmon before, obviously has had intentional education materials put on it to focus on the salmon that return, but anecdotally not a place to go see salmon. However, this fall, a longtime volunteer of NC reached out because her partner went to go hike Boyd Creek and got this video of coho salmon. I'm pretty sure it's coho salmon. It is very hard to tell. I'm using a lot of gut intuition here, but one of the key things that tells you it's salmon, or it tells me it's salmon at least, that I would put money on, is those white tails. Those white tails, when salmon return to spawn, salmon use their tails a lot to dig up their redds. Their tails are also the most like fragile part of their body. It's the thing that's hitting the most things or being bitten by the most salmon. Those tend to turn white first as a salmon returns. And then you can just see, maybe not in this video, but you can just see the like red coloring. Coho can get kind of dark, but they have those like very bright red splotches. Anyway, she sent me this video and said, hey, this is in Boyd Creek. Do you know what kind of salmon these are? And I was like, what? This is Boyd. I was sending it to all the people. I was sending it to my boss and saying, can you believe this? Which is really neat. And it just kind of shows that we can be very confident in what we think we know. but nature is always kind of changing and always trying to kind of fight that in our way or in its own way, which is why we are really excited about salmon spotters. So I mentioned salmon sightings before. We've been running salmon sighting events for at least 10 years now, probably informally even before then. But salmon sighting events, I schedule them out early fall at places that are easy to access by the public and places that I think salmon are going to be visible. And then I tell people, come join us. We'll be by the creek. We can answer all your questions. You can come see salmon, hopefully, fingers crossed. And those have been really successful. It's always kind of a toss-up whether salmon are going to be there for some sites, but they've run, thankfully, pretty successfully, even with the odd timing sometimes. But last fall was our first year of Salmon Spotters. So Salmon Spotters is a citizen science project that we created as a way to have more people out in the creeks in fall looking for spawning salmon. A lot of the data that I talk about, like from the state or tribes, or even data that NSEA collects, can be very like very limited, time-based. Once every couple weeks they'll go out to a site, and even then a lot of times monitoring can be hard to fund, and even the city of Bellingham, who manages a lot of creeks in Bellingham proper that have salmon in it, have to limit how much monitoring they do just with funding. Everything can be really back to funding sometimes. So we reached out to folks. We said, we'll train you on how to identify salmon. You pick a site that either you own because you're the landowner or you have easy access to because it's a public park. And then go out to that site once or twice a week between basically October and January and send us what you see. We had a fantastic turnout, better than we were hoping for. We had 45 volunteers that monitored 25 sites. Those sites are here on the map in the blue circles. So we also had a really great spread of Whatcom County, at least Western Whatcom County. So a lot of spots in Bellingham, which we kind of expected because Bellingham is filled with a lot of parks that have creeks in them, and it's also just got a bigger population, so more people are going to sign up. But then we had so many people across Whatcom County that we were really encouraged that this project could really go somewhere. The volunteers made up a ton of different demographics. We had students at Western, we had families that used it as part of their homeschooling for their kids. We also had retiree, like all ages from, I think our youngest was 7. I don't know how old our oldest was, but up to retiree age. We had landowners and then obviously park goers. So it made up a wide variety of our community. And all together, they gave nearly 120 hours of just looking for salmon in the fall, which was, oh, 1 second. Oh, goodness, it's spring. No, we're okay. So 120, oh my gosh, hold on. Okay, I think that's it. So 120 hours to look for salmon, which is way more than we could ever do as a really small organization. Some of that first data. Goodness gracious. Some of that first data is exactly what we thought we would see. So this is Chuckanut Creek. If you're not familiar with Whatcom County, Chuckanut Creek is runs out of the Chuckanut Mountains near Lake Samish area, Lake Padden area, basically between those two areas, and then out into Chuckanut Bay. And we had a family that lived in that area. They were really excited to help very regularly monitor Chuckanut Creek, which got us data like this. So this shows the number of salmon they saw on any given visit to the creek. So they obviously started seeing chum salmon early November, and then they stopped seeing them after early December, which if you remember that picture I showed you before, we expect chum and coho salmon to spawn between November and January. So this matches up exactly with that. One of the other data points we got was Fish Trap Creek. Fish Trap Creek is in the city of Linden, so north of Bellingham, a little north, it's really directly north of Bellingham. Fish Trap Creek for us is a prominent coho creek. We've done a lot of work on Fish Trap. Here we saw the first significant peak. This was actually the peak number of salmon observed that whole season at this site, was seen October 18th. So again, if you remember that picture I showed before, we expect chum and coho to spawn November to January. To me, seeing this and seeing pictures, so it wasn't a data error, seeing this happen in October 18th, I was like, that's really early. And that was really unfortunate because our November 18th was when we had our salmon sighting scheduled for that exact creek. We, I think, still managed to see one or two salmon kind of lingering at our salmon sighting event. But one of the really cool things that we were able to do because of the volunteers that were participating in this project is that when there weren't a lot of salmon at our salmon sighting, for the first time, we were able to tell them why. And it's because we missed them and that they had come before, and we had pictures of the salmon that had come in before. So at least we weren't going, oh, well, you know, we used to make a joke. I know, exactly. We used to make a joke that they didn't get our invitation, right? But now with this project, we can actually be more informed of what's happening in a really local, zoomed in place, like an individual creek in Whatcom County, which is super neat. I'm going to show one more thing from that came out of Salmon Spotters, and it is a video that really highlights the importance of riparian habitat. When I say riparian habitat, I mean habitat that parallels a creek on either side. So when we think of a healthy riparian habitat, we think of big trees, lush forests, nice shrubs, a winding creek running through. And this video highlights why habitat like that is really critical. What was that? Oh, I can see it. So that was on Deer Creek. Deer Creek is a tributary of 10 Mile and then runs into the Nooksack River. So really connected to a prominent water source in our area. And I really like that video. So Josh, who is a salmon spotter, big props to him. He has that trail camera that he would set out there. And those are all the things he's captured, not just during the fall, but kind of year round. And that was one of those like hidden things that we weren't expecting from this project, was to be able to see a really good example of why salmon are really important, because almost all of the animals shown in that video have some kind of relationship with salmon. The highlights are obviously the bald eagle. We know bald eagles are heavily reliant. Their migration patterns are dependent on salmon runs. It makes up a good portion of their diet, particularly in the fall. So it just helped with a really nice connection point that we sometimes miss, is that our work's not just important for salmon, but for the greater environment as a whole. So for Salmon Spotter's future, it's really just to grow it, expand it with more sites that are NC priorities. I've highlighted a couple here that I'd love that are starred. It'll be relying on recruiting some more landowners that we have connections with that are on properties. But there's also a couple of sites that I think we could get more data from that are easily accessible just because they're in parks, which is really neat. Okay. So I wanted to include this picture here as kind of that transition, because this is just every line, regardless of color, shows some kind of salmon habitat or potential salmon habitat.
There's salmon in Lake Whatcom.
There are salmon in Lake Whatcom. So the salmon specific to Lake Whatcom are actually kokanee, which are a type of landlocked sockeye. So there are salmon in Lake Whatcom, but then there's before Whatcom Falls Park is the natural barrier. Everything downstream of that is anadromous salmon habitat too. So coho, chinook, chum, that kind of thing. But yeah, there are salmon in Lake Whatcom. There's also trout, which if we include steelhead, which is also endangered, is a anadromous salmon, which means that they migrate from ocean to freshwater ocean and back. So there's plenty of salmon that could be running through our creeks that we obviously have data on, but we couldn't speak very confidently to that without seeing them year to year. Which brings us to our Stream Stewards program, because one of the biggest things that came out of Salmon Spotters as well was that we had 25 sites. It was about, I think, 17 different actual water bodies. Some sites were sort of the same creek, but on a different area. And only half of the creeks that we had people monitoring this fall saw salmon. Doesn't mean that they're not there, but if volunteers were consistently monitoring a creek that we expected to see salmon and they didn't see salmon, that's more concerning. Still a chance that they could have just missed them. Like I said, they're very elusive. Sometimes they migrate at night. One of our creeks we got a lot of rain late in the season, and then the creek was just muddy throughout the rest of the project. So if there were salmon in it, you couldn't see. So there's reasons why there might not be salmon. But we also saw a lot of volunteers reaching out, especially early in the fall, saying there's no water in my creek, or the water is there's like pockets of water, but there's no way a salmon could get through. Some volunteers were noticing trash, or they would send me a picture and ask about an invasive species like reed canary grass or something like that. So again, even when we have this really cool opportunity to see salmon, to appreciate salmon, to learn more about them, it comes down to habitat, which is the almost the basis of NC's start. So we were established in 1991. I included two pictures here of a work party, is what we call our volunteer restoration events. Community work parties are those often happening free opportunities. Anyone can show up, get a shovel from us, put some gloves on, and then put a tree in the ground like you see here. Our founding board members started work parties by just recruiting some of their friends, telling them to bring a shovel to meet them at this creek. They've got plants from a local nursery. We're gonna fix this habitat ourselves. That has grown to us in the past 33 years, hosting over 1,300 events with volunteers. Every year we get at least 1,000 volunteers, obviously some duplicates because we have some very passionate people that come every week, but donating a lot of time to putting trees in the ground and connecting to the places that not only salmon rely on, but then we rely on as healthy green space and healthy water. These work parties include 3 main projects. So planting, as you can see here. As I mentioned earlier, plants provide invaluable sources to water. They provide shade to keep it cold. Their roots help filter out pollutants from groundwater, which is particularly important in our area of Whatcom County, where we have a variety of land uses, including urban, to agriculture, to industrial, residential. And then they also help not prevent erosion, but help control erosion so that you don't see these major bank shifts during typical rain events that we have. And then we have invasive removal. So there's a lot of different types of invasives that can completely fill that riparian area that I mentioned. This picture here just shows a field of Himalayan blackberry that volunteers are working through. By removing invasives that easily outcompete native plants, we make space to put more native plants in, which then will provide those services way better than an invasive plant like blackberry or ivy or reed canary grass can provide. The other opportunity that we have is maintenance. So this is actually a pretty new part of stream stewards programming because, like I said, we started 30 years ago. So a lot of the projects and even the work parties that we hosted 30 years ago are now growing into these really big, tall trees, which is really exciting. But then all of those things that we put in to protect those trees are now becoming their own litter. So in the left photo, we have someone kneeling down to get that blue tube, which is the little specks of blue that you can see out from underneath what I think is actually a lot of invasives, which is another problem. But removing the blue tube that's no longer serving a purpose. So the blue tubes that we put around baby trees helps protect those trees, insulates them, make sure they don't get chopped down, no one tramples them, make sure rodents don't get to them. And then the picture on the right is one of our current interns is cutting away a cage. So beaver and deer cages are really important when we put in young cedars and maples, especially because otherwise they get eaten or chewed down before they can grow and actually provide a service. But now we have sites that have trees that are growing too big for their caging. And then they're going around their caging. And in most scenarios, that's not good for a tree. Some can survive it and just grow around it, but most of them need help. And so we have started our maintenance work parties. We call them Stream Team. They're a fun midweek opportunity, but those are very new to the organization because we've grown into having that need, which is bittersweet. The last thing I want to show before I get to our current work parties is this video that an AmeriCorps member made, which provides some input from
every fall and spring season.
Volunteers.
NC hosts numerous community work parties throughout Whatcom County, where we restore salmon habitat by planting native trees and shrubs and removing invasive species. Restoring salmon habitat is an enormous task, and we need the help of our community to take action to keep wild salmon here for future generations.
I love coming to these because it's a great thing to do on a weekend. You know, it's helping the environment and you know, it's helping the community. And it's just super fun to come out and plant some trees.
If the environment goes, humans go, and we've had such an impact on the environment that I want to do the little things I can do to give back.
Well, actually, I'm coming out through my work, Crystal Creek Logistics. They volunteered several times through your organization, and I just started there about 3 weeks ago, but we saw this work party coming up and got 3 of us here today from our company, and thought it'd be a good idea to come outside, get our hands dirty, and, you know, help everyone out.
It's a good cause, something we both care about, and it's enjoyable to kind of get in there and see some progress being made.
It's really well organized, so it makes it easy to participate. It's fun, everyone's in a really good mood. It's you know, many hands make light work and it's fun.
You gotta meet different people in your community, and we're all from different backgrounds.
What I love about NC is that you can come work at a work party, gather as a community, and make a direct impact on the environment. Physically taking away invasive or physically planting a tree, instant impact. That's what I love about it.
Those folks are obviously a little biased, but I really like that video. And many of those people that we saw talking were coming out during COVID, which is a particularly difficult time for everyone. And was just it was nice to still have a chance to see people and provide that opportunity outdoors, which is sweet. Okay, the last thing that I want to just inform about is a really neat, I feel like there's a day for everything now, but World Fish Migration Day happens every other year, and it is a global initiative to do exactly this. Know, imagine, and act. So increase knowledge of migratory fish, their connection to lands and waters, and how important rivers are when they flow freely. Imagine and explore the life of migratory fishes, and then act as stewards. So when we think of migratory fishes in our area, that's salmon, but there's other places around the world that have different types of fish, including salmon, that migrate. So I like to throw this out when we can and teach people about World Fish Migration Day, and bring us from a very zoomed in lens to a very zoomed out global initiative, that there's a lot of people doing similar work to us to protect their waters and their lands. And then the last thing I want to share, it's kind of tiny. It's tinier than I thought it would be, but are the remaining events that we have for community members to come out and volunteer with us and plant trees or remove invasives. Basically every Saturday through May, including this Saturday. I didn't put it up there, but we're with the city of Bellingham at Squalicum Creek Park. Next week, we're partnering with the Whatcom Land Trust. And then the last 2 weekends of May, including World Fish Migration Day on May 25th, we're partnering with landowners that have creeks on their property to help improve salmon habitat and water quality. So, and then we have our stream team events that are midweek. So those are Thursdays, two remaining this season, May 16th and June 20th. So that's all about stewardship programming, with an emphasis on our volunteer work parties, and then our Salmon Spotters project, which is brand new. I will take any questions if anyone